Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Good. How you doing, Todd?
Busy, man. So what the hell's going on in Iran, my friend? What's your gut feel here?
Yeah, so we haven't talked since the beginning of the of combat, and just laying my cards on the table. I likely, if I was advising Trump, knowing what I know and knew, I likely would not have recommended, going to war with
Mm-hmm.
Iran. And I just say that up front. But it doesn't mean, I'm not one to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That doesn't mean I need to come out and take a side
Right.
for or against something that, my main understanding is that I don't understand everything going on with it. And
Let me just say, very well put. That's kind of exactly where I'm coming from. I would not have recommended this war, but now that we're there, we have to deal with reality, and we got to get to a good place for my children's future out of this conflict, and not another destructive event on the American military, our national security, and our economic and geopolitical power. Back to you.
no, that's very well said, and and I'm glad you added that, because when you look, we always compliment the independent media, and especially, value-based conservative independent media, because it
Mm-hmm.
really is what has saved the republic. But in this case, you're seeing the trap that the legacy independent media makers are all falling into. They think they've got to come out. It's the left wing globalist trap, where you have to be black or white on every issue. You have to take one side or another. And the problem with that is, especially in the beginning, is the human ego. Once you take a side, you're not
Yes.
coming off that side unless you're, incredibly self-actualized, full of knowledge. And most of these, whatever they are, podcasters, influencers, do not, are not of that caliber. So, I set it up in context with that. And, you hear a lot of people ask, have we given up on statecraft? And, I think that's always a question that we should ask ourselves. No matter how convinced you are we should go to war, the president should turn to his advisors and say, do we have is anyone in here have any hope we can change things at the negotiating table? And as you
Mm-hmm.
know, Wickoff and Kirshner were negotiating with them before things broke down and Trump decided to go. And so there, I go to one of the most esteemed historians we have, which is Victor David Hansen. And, I look at what he says about it, and he's been following. I've followed him for a long time, but he's always been a big, Iran's been one of his areas of expertise. He's been alive for long enough to follow it since the hostages were held for 444 days. But, I want to read what he said, because it's also important to understand. And Hansen says, no, you can't negotiate with the Iranians because their whole currency is lying. They're fanatic ideologues, and they have a supernatural view of what's going to happen. Remember, they're religious extremists to the extreme, and they believe they're on the right side of cosmic divinity and all the ideas that they can jam into that category. Ex-Iranian President Rafsanjani, one of his favorite statements was that Israel was a one-bomb state, and that was the advantage that you got from having half the Jews in the world in one place, where all you needed was one bomb.
Mhm.
And so you can't negotiate. And I add that quote because, someone might say, yeah, whatever, that's an extremist quote from, an ex-president. But the Israelis are, they follow Iran very closely, obviously, and they're very aware of that mentality.
Mhm.
And so whatever your views are on Israel, and again, we've got these the independent media that's taken a view on Israel and can't come back off their view. So it's kind of poisoned any hope for objectivity on this.
Well,
And
that's what we're trying to do here, Pete, is provide objectivity. And I think we're one of the, if not the only, one of the few places that are providing that for people to make their own decisions. Sorry to cut
I
you off. Go
agree.
ahead.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. And I read your, I saw you, and also I saw your video and read that article you wrote on it, and I agree
Mm.
wholeheartedly. And, Hansen just goes on to say that this is their typical rope-a-dope strategy, where they're going to, they just believe they never give anything at the negotiating table. And that's 46 years of pattern ossification. This is a pattern that is etched in stone. They do it every time they negotiate. Obviously, they took the Obama administration to the cleaners. We fed them billions of dollars secretly. Again, they talk about War Powers Act. No, there was no powers except one, and that act, and it was completely dysfunctional because it got us to where we are today. But the Iranians, remember, that's fresh in their minds, so they just the outweighed them strategy, and we're not going to give an inch strategy, which is again etched in stone from 46 years, is what they brought to the table this time.
Yeah.
And the final thing Victor David Hansen says that I think is important to bring up is the difference between this and, for instance, Iraq is Iran has no allies in the Middle East. And, you're probably like me in the beginning when they bombed all the other Middle Eastern countries. I was in shock. It was the most senseless decision I think they could have made at that time, to the point where they fired 10 times the missiles and drones at the UAE that they did at Israel. So this just underscores not only do they have no allies, but they have no way to restock their weapons. Russia and China are their suppliers. North Korea, you could probably throw in there, but Russia and China, you can't fly in right now, and you can't sail in. So they painted themselves in a corner. I believe they've figured that out. They're like, whoa, we didn't think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're in a world of hurt now from their inflexible, rigid negotiating position.
Yeah.
Victor David Hansen doesn't cover it, but I think it should also be noted that all across the globe, almost everyone agrees that between 20 and 30,000 protesters were just killed a month ago.
Yeah.
And
Let me just say, I have been covering that with the Iranian resistance for literally a decade. And we've been talking about they round girls up, they execute them, they let them die in cages, they torture them. It's horrible. So go ahead.
yeah, so the most iconic, the one that you hear most about is the Masha Amini, and she's
Mm-hmm.
that 23-year-old who wore her hijab wrong, or in protest didn't want to wear it, and they killed her. They took her in, they arrested her, brought her in, and beat her to death. The secret police, and these secret police are all over the place. Same thing happened a month earlier. A young girl was dancing on TikTok. So,
Yeah.
anyone who has a daughter, or knows that you can get on TikTok, see other people dancing, and you're going to get caught up in that. And that's all she did. Same thing. Secret police came, grabbed her. She died in custody. So these are real cases. I follow Russian media, and Russian media very much was on the side of Iran in the beginning of this, and they reported on they were reporting on the protesters too, and that's why I said even those who are pro-Iranian were bringing out the fact that they were just killing wholesale these protesters.
Well, let me talk about Russia real quick. Sorry to keep interrupting you, but
no, it's good.
I think that look, Putin can't, like, for lack of a better way of saying it, betray his ally, right? Or he would lose support from all of the people that he depends on in his circle right now against the Western effort in Ukraine. So there's that. I still think there's a chance for economic cooperation between us and Russia if we can get a good end to this. And I think Putin's saying what he needs to say, but also even he probably is providing intelligence to Iran, but we've been doing that for 5 years.
Yeah.
And they're striking Moscow. So it's the pot calling the kettle black. Back to you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I'll get to that. I believe that just the part with Putin. I believe that the same thing we've been saying the whole time, that there's already a tacit agreement between Putin and Trump about cooperation, underpinned by economic cooperation, because that's what binds countries. But I believe they've already agreed to agree and to work together to make the world, better, more multipolar, which I know Trump has agreed to. And so, one of the interesting things about this is yesterday Trump came out in a press conference, and he kind of shocked everyone, and he said, I think the war is going to be over soon. It looks like we're coming to an end here. I had a great conversation with President Putin today, and then he kind of closed it. And to me, he was saying that somehow with Putin they agreed on something. Putin has major influence on the Iranians, but why would Trump, repeat what was Bush's biggest mistake? You don't try to predict the end of a war. You don't say it's going to be over in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So I think that is underpinning what's going on. I think there's the other part of this that's important is what the rest of the allies, the other Arab states in the Middle East, are thinking, and many of them 100 support this 100%. Have been working not just against Iran, but with the U.S. and Israel against Iran, which is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of this intelligence is coming from. The intelligence cannot be ignored. The initial killing of the 48 leaders, including the president, is unprecedented, unexpected. You have to have inside intel to accomplish something like that. I mean, like inside intel, like wife, spouse, deputy. It's got to be only someone who knows inner circle movements, and that's got to be someone in the inner circle.
I don't think this new guy is going to last very long either. Just saying.
And he's got psychological problems. I don't think the Iranian Guard is going to obey him or think highly enough of him. And I think that's where a big part of this intel network is also nested. So what's going to happen with that? We'll see in these next few days. But there's multiple sides to this. And the final thing I'd say is, just the purpose. Yesterday, somehow it came out, during the question and answer with Trump, he kind of pivoted and he said, well, no, this is about China. And that's been repeated a couple other times by others in the administration. And, that's that's just a ridiculous thing to say. That might be a second order effect from what
Mhm.
you're doing, but you don't, conduct combat operations in a third country because your purpose is to do something to a second country.
I
And
would say it's more about providing security to our hemisphere and nation, which obviously China's a part of that, but so is Iran. So it's all in the mix. But go ahead.
yeah. And look, again, same thing. You don't have to have one purpose, but you
Hmm.
do need to explain, just like we just did, the multi sides to it.
Hmm.
And to me, we just talked about the main purpose.
Hmm.
They're killing girls.
Hmm.
They're killing protesters in the number 20 to 30,000, which, to be agreed on by the Russians is pretty incredible. That's a lot of people to
And that, that
slaughter.
that that was only in the last uprising. I mean, it didn't
Right.
count the 5 before that where they killed a similar number.
Divorce is tough, but your finances don't have to be. I'm David Cross, and I'm a certified divorce financial analyst practitioner. My job is to help you get a fair financial settlement in your divorce and to guide you to smarter money decisions. Find out how we can help you. U.S. Asset Management. It's your money.
A warm welcome here at the National Press Club. Welcome to the journalists, welcome to the Embraer team, and welcome to the other guests that we have here. We're going to announce, and as some of you guessed it right when they came in, the first E2 order by an American operator. And that operator is Avello. We believe this is really a strategic shift to unlock profitability for the customer. I'm very pleased that we have Andrew Levy here as the CEO of Avello, and I'm very pleased to give the stage to share a little bit more about what Avello is going to do with the E2 195. Thank you very much.
Couldn't be more excited to be here as part of this historic announcement. We have such a great cultural fit as companies, so we're very, very excited to be Embraer's newest customer. We launched our airline in April of 21, and our target is focusing on small secondary airports of large metro areas. We've carried over 8 million customers since we started on 63,000 flights. And we've done all these things with 1,200 of the greatest crew members I could ever imagine having, and many of them are here with me today. This is the right airplane for us. It's going to open up opportunities for us that no other aircraft can serve. The best thing about the airplane, of course, is you will not find a middle seat on this airplane. It doesn't exist. We won't have any to offer. It's going to be the best cabin in the United States, and we're so excited about that. This is going to elevate our experience to the highest level, and we think our customers are absolutely going to love the airplane.
Right. What was the what do they call the big uprising during the Obama administration? The Green Uprising or something like that. It's called Green. Most of the protesters wore green. So in that one, we led them to believe we were going to
Yes.
support them. And in fact, Obama said, "We're going to support you." He did he did a press conference, multiple press conferences, but that was the administration's outward communication on on those protests, and then we just let them hang out to dry. That was what everyone agreed. They were, so close to overthrowing the government. They looked like the military had thrown down their arms. They weren't killing protesters. So we let that slip through our hands. And, to me, that should be, if any time they talk about the purpose, it should be about human rights. And those citizens, those girls who can't even dance on TikTok without being arrested by the secret police and then beaten to death.
Yeah.
Well, as to show an example, to make an example out of them.
Yeah.
That's insane. And anyone who knows the history of Iran and Persia knows there's too much greatness, too much potential there to continue to have this entire country living under these fanatical religious extremists, which is what they are.
How do you think this plays out, Pete?
So again, I think what we're seeing is all we really know right now, because they're holding their cards close to their chests on the intelligence.
Yes.
But I think Iran, the writing's on the wall. They're running out of, missiles, drones, everything else. They're running out of leaders, fanatical leaders. They're running out of military supporters, high-ranking military supporters, and all that together with the embargo. Remember, they just made the decision to move Tehran because they're also going through a all-time drought in Iran, and Tehran cannot support its population with the water it has in its reservoirs.
That's because the IRGC has diverted a lot of the water, most of the water, for their own industrial oligarchic designs, away from the farmers, away from the people. So
yeah. So there's a lot of turmoil. I think it's going to collapse. I think that again, this intelligence they have is going to play out. That these sub-element leaders are going to rise up. And I do not think there's going to be boots on the ground. I've heard people talk about a special ops raid to get the remaining uranium, but anyone who thinks that would be an easy raid, it's probably spread out, in chunks, because I think they said they could make 11 bombs, is what Wickoff said. They told him to open the negotiations. We can still make 11 bombs. So there's 11 different locations, and unless you get all 11 of them, you might as well not have gotten 1 or 2 or 3 of them. Right. So I don't think that's possible. I don't think it makes any sense. I think Trump knows that, and let's see how it plays out, given the intelligence, given the people of Iran who are like a under pressure, a pot that's ready to boil. Let's see what happens with that. I think they'll do the right thing and overthrow the religious fundamentalists.
Anything else on Iran? I cut you off, but anything else you wanted to get out?
No, I think that's it right there.
Okay, so we've got some stuff on Ukraine. Let's shift focus to Eastern Europe and in Donbass. I have slides and videos ready when you are. So just
go ahead. Let's show. Yeah, this is a German reporter, and he just, we talked about this in our last episodes. This is still probably has more potential to lead to catastrophic results than the Iran situation. Desperate men make desperate moves, and the Ukrainians have been put into a position of desperation. Things in Kyiv are still the same power-wise. There is some power, I think 20%, but it's still cold. They still don't have power. The bombing continues. We just don't have all the the situational awareness we had before the war. But it's still going on, and this guy makes the comment, that the likelihood of escalation by any means necessary is still highly likely, and I think that's the point of this. Go ahead, the next one. I think this is just, again, to reiterate, this continues to happen. We show these every time for a couple reasons. One, the numbers are always the same. They're either 1,000 to 39 or 1,000 to 30. So there's never been an exchange where the Russians, in the initial agreement, they said they'd give 1,000 at a time and expected, they'd be getting maybe 1,000 back or something. But Ukraine's never turned over more than 39 bodies, and here they turned out 35. So, this is, again, this 30-to-1 casualty ratio that's been going on for a couple years, and this is one of the most accurate barometers of those casualties. So, and we're not, as we've said before, we're not for one of these sides or the other. We're not for Ukraine. We're not for Russia. Certainly, we're for the end of this war, because the war doesn't make sense. And this just shows it's still going on. Men are still dying, and they don't really know why they're dying.
Got it. It's sad. That's just real life evidence right there. I mean, you can't You can't fudge that. All right, here's the next one.
Yeah, and then to just emphasize what we were just saying, this is the madman Zelensky's being interviewed by a British reporter, and the British reporter, at the end of the interview asked him this hypothetical: if someone offered you a nuclear weapon or a dirty bomb, would you take it? And Zelensky answered, with pleasure. The British reporter tried to get him not to. He tried to cut him off to prevent that from being said, which shows you the incredibly senseless British media, how they continue to march to this mindless drummer of war at all costs, defeat Russia. And this guy tried to cut him off. But what it shows is Zelensky's true nature. If he gets a dirty bomb or somehow someone can build him a bomb, he'll use it. So that threat is still there. We're not talking about it because everything's about Iran, but it might be even more likely now because Zelensky, who's commented for these last 2 weeks, is angry, is frustrated that he's not getting all the attention, that the Ukraine war is not the world's priority right now. There's an old saying about actors don't know how to act when they're not acting.
Yeah.
So when all the attention's not on him, he doesn't know what to do. And, the worst thing that can happen for Ukraine is that he's bored and starts unfolding maps again and, forcing military operations like he did with the Kursk offensive.
Yeah.
So still very volatile, very dangerous situation. And, we need to be focused on that. And I think, again, going back to what I talked about, Trump and Putin talked yesterday morning, had a good conversation, according to Trump. I have not seen the Russian take on that conversation yet. But, the only way to end that Ukraine war is, in my opinion, still to normalize relation with Russia, the U.S. to normalize relations with Russia so that it immediately neutralizes this craziness out of the EU. And Zelensky's just fantasy that if he can do something, if he can make one big blow, he can change the course of the war. And that needs to just be taken off the table. And I believe that normalized relations is the best way to do that.
All right, so we've got a video from the old horse, they call him, the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov.
Прицеливаясь на гражданские объекты, такие как банки, электростанции, транспорт.
I didn't realize there's no subtitles. Do you want to talk about what that is about? I can read it off the post you sent if you want.
Yeah, go ahead and read it. Because I don't have it up.
The Kiev regime directly controls hundreds of so-called centers, or so-called call centers that terrorize Russians, but they are not limited to our territory alone. They also operate actively in Europe. So he's talking about what you've said over and over, the censorship industrial complex.
Yeah, and so it's I like that he commented on it because that needs to be kept front and center. There's a reason for this fanatical obstinance that the EU and that US neocons or warmonger globalists continue to latch onto, and this is one of them. This is the main one, that Ukraine is the center for the censorship industrial complex, and you cannot throw these elections. You cannot, go in and run these color revolutions without controlling the media. And the way you control the media is through the censorship industrial complex, which is a hub that not only devises messages, but then implements those messages, and the censorship, which is non-coverage in target countries. So, we can't lose sight of that. We can't lose sight of what needs to happen once the combat is over in Ukraine. That and also the biolabs, we need full accountability of that, what they're doing, who put them in place, and we need to neutralize them so they're not out there threatening the world in the future.
And we also need to track all the money, but and the weapons. That's a
Yep.
whole nother issue. So,
Yep.
all right, one more quote you put up. People may have a hard time reading that, so I'll read it. After his conversation with Putin, Trump announced that he is temporarily lifting some sanctions.